Okay, good evening, everyone. It is 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026. This is a meeting of the Town of Bolton Advisory Committee, and we're continuing our review of the FY27 budget. In fact, we're nearing the end of our review. Okay, and tonight we have representatives from Minuteman High School here who will give us a short presentation on the high school and this year's budget and assessment. So, without further ado, I will turn it over to, let's see, Heidi will be presenting. Okay, excellent, thank you. And would you like me to share the screen, or would you like to share the screen if?
Nikki can share her screen if you don't mind.
Okay.
And I will start it off and Nikki will jump in a couple minutes.
Okay, let me see if I can figure out how to allow you to.
If you click the share button, it should be, you should be able to allow others to share. Yep.
There we go. Okay. Maybe that will work. Nikki, do you want to try that?
Let's see.
Oh, wow, that worked. Okay.
All right. Heidi, can you see that?
I sure can. Thank you very much. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our public presentation of the fiscal year 2027 budget recommendation for the Minuteman Regional Vocational Technical School District. So one of the things that your town is a part of is a full school district. We serve grades 9 through 12, but we also have adult programming, and students who come to our adult programming from your towns also receive benefit. Okay. So some highlights about some Bolton students. We have one junior who's on co-op at White Electrical from our electrical program, and we have 6 seniors out on co-op. So that means they spend their vocational immersion week actually in a field doing work in their field. So we have advanced manufacturing, animal science, biotech, and engineering. Right now we have 31 students at Minuteman in 10 of our different program majors. And we want to give a shout out to our football captain, who is from Bolton, Ryan Thornberry, and a soccer and basketball all-star, Lily Roth. I hope that you'll see with the numbers that Nikki shares with you that our budget priorities do reflect our values. And again, I want to emphasize that Minuteman is a different type of education. We are immersive vocational education, which means you spend a full week, full time, truly learning in your trade. And a lot of people are familiar with language immersion programs. So if you want to make that connection, we are a vocational immersion program. And I'm going to hand it over to Nikki to give some details about the numbers while we're waiting for.
Thank you, Heidi. So we are bringing to you today Bolton's preliminary assessment, and that is approximately $1.4 million with the building project, the debt service. Without that, it's about $1.1 million. And just to give you some background on our total budget, operating and capital is a 2.99% increase compared to our FY26 budget, just shy of $33.5 million. To break that out further, we have our operating recommendation, a 3.84% increase. Our operating capital, which is mostly our leases, our athletic field debt, and our capital stabilization fund. And then our debt service, our building project is fairly consistent, just about a 1% increase year to year. And what does that mean for the towns? Overall, once that total budget sees the the revenue from the state and all of the other items that offset, we have our assessment to our member towns is 2.44% increase from FY26. But as you know, our budget is based on a 4-year rolling average for our operating budget in particular. And what that means for Bolton is there's actually an increase of a decrease of 3.5%. So again, that 1.4 million. And what's really going on with our budget? We have our budget priorities this year. We have successfully negotiated the teacher CBA. And that includes a 3% increase for this year. And then the steps and levels for the teachers. What that will look like for FY 28 and 29 is another 3% and then a 2.5%. We always keep supplies and materials in mind because of the kind of education and the hands-on experience that the students have in the classroom. So, keeping in mind the tariffs with, metals and that sort of thing, that's always on our mind. But the biggest non-salary budget driver that we've talked about is insurances, in particular health insurance. As I had mentioned kind of before the meeting started across the board, certainly expecting a double-digit increase in health insurance. Our capital stabilization we'll talk to a little bit more in a future slide. And our debt service, just a continued promise that we are offsetting our athletic field debt service with the rental money that we get for renting our athletic field facility. So our capital stabilization request is $1,050,000. That's a $100,000 or a 10% increase. In our plan with our capital planning committee would be to slowly increase that until we reach the maximum contribution each, which would for this year be about 1.3 million. For all of our other capital needs and planning, we have put those on hold as we are going through a MSBA recommissioning pilot program. It's a free program that's evaluating our HVAC, electrical, plumbing, building envelope, and our building management system. So we're hoping to get that report this spring. And then from there, we'll assess what other capital needs that we have to assess within the building. But, trying to build up our capital stabilization fund will help. We did have a 20-year capital plan or capital assessment plan that we've looked at. So, continuing to fund that will help in future years where we see a big increase in expected needs for the building. The school committee could vote to utilize those capital stabilization funds versus assessing the towns more. So it's really more of a strategic budgeting tool as well. And then OPEB is always a hot topic as well. OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. We had a study committee put together in 2021, which created a funding plan. Right now, we are increasing that 5% each year. So what that looks like is just about 1.2 million, which about half of that is paying for our active health, our active retiree health insurance, and then the other half is straight into that trust fund. So our trust fund balance just over 3 million, with our total liability at about 17 million. So we are about 18% funded right now, and we're actively looking to continue to close that gap. And as I mentioned before, the budget does tie strongly to enrollment. So our total enrollment right now, 657 students, the blue line. Our member town students is 615, that red line. And then our non-member town has enrollment of 42 students. So as you can see, majority of our school is made up of our member towns. And then in particular for Bolton, here you'll see there's 31 students, as Heidi mentioned. We have a freshman class of 6, a sophomore class of 10, a junior class of 6, and then a senior class of 9. So, the Town of Bolton did have 12 seniors that graduated. And for the class of 2023, there have been 11 applicants, and all of those will be accepted for the upcoming year. So our goal is really to maximize enrollment in the district. And here you'll see the total preliminary assessments per town and how that breaks out. Again, the total here that I had mentioned, a total 2.44% increase, while the 4-year rolling average is about 3.2%. So in particular, you'll see here Bolton's assessment is decreasing about 3.5%, while the 4-year rolling average is slightly increasing. Overall for Bolton, we've seen quite an increase in the 4-year rolling average as far as percentages wise goes. So this will be, a year for Bolton in particular, on the financial side, that you'll finally kind of be leveling out your 4-year rolling average, and you're seeing kind of a more consistent or a slight decrease compared to the double-digit increases you've seen over the past few years. And then just to wrap up our presentation again, this is showing the 2.99%. It's our FY26 budget and our FY27 budget and the actual numbers. Our non-assessment revenue is based on the governor's budget that was released at the end of January. So those numbers have been updated. So slight increases for Chapter 78 and Chapter 71. We also have a regional transportation revolving account now. So we were reimbursed more than what we had estimated last year. So if that happens, that money will always offset in the next year, in particular the transportation budget. So that was something that we were able to do to help offset the member town assessments. We have prior year tuition, the excess and deficiency fund. We offset about $650,000. Our capital fee we offset, as well as the facility rental revolving. So again, that 2.44% increase in the total member town assessments. And this is just our breakout of all the components that are in our budget book. Again, you can see the big decrease here in that transportation budget, mostly due to that transportation revolving account. So thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it, certainly, and we are happy to answer any questions that you have.
Well, Nikki and Heidi, first, thank you very much for that great presentation. And also, thank you very much for all the work you've done on the budget to keep things at essentially a 3% budget increase from last year. I know in today's environment, with all of the budget pressures that you guys feel, that is not easy to do, but we really appreciate the work that must have gone into keeping that increase reasonable.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone have questions?
I've got a question. You had prior year tuition, I think was in the revenue side. What is that? What it sounds like is that somebody did pay prior and.
So yes. Oh, I can take that. No problem.
Sure.
So we have very few students who are from other towns. So because we don't have a wait list and we've accepted every single student from all of our member districts, we have a couple seats extra that we allow students to take from other towns. If they are not a part of our regional agreement, then they have to pay tuition. Their town pays tuition. They pay for transportation, they pay tuition, they pay a capital fee, and if they are a special education student, they pay a special education fee. So you as member districts are not supplementing education of people from other towns.
Okay.
So
It's,
right now there was about, as we mentioned, like 42 non-member town students. So that's all the revenue that we're collecting this year, and FY26 will offset the FY27 budget. So we will bill those towns twice a year and collect that money. And we estimate that to be able to offset the member town assessments that our member towns are charged.
thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a general question. Do you have to pay, do you have like sort of a regional transportation agreement that you contract with someone for that? And if so, have you seen dramatic cost increases over the last few years?
Yes, we do. We have our own transportation company that we have to contract with. We're required to provide transportation to all students as a regional district. I want to say last year, we renewed our contract with them, and it was an increase not as substantial as what we had anticipated. Our fleet covers a much larger region than a typical town, but fewer students. So that's the unique part of that. But we locked in for 5 years.
Right.
Yes.
But
So
you're
I'll
per student.
I'll add in there. Sorry. We went out to bid. We did get responses. I was worried because at the time we were seeing a lot of other districts seeing double digit at least. What came in for us was a 5% increase. And that was seen in last year's budget. So now, as Heidi mentioned, we signed on for a 5-year deal, and that's just the typical kind of cost of living increases each year. So.
Very interesting. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? Okay, great. Well, again, really appreciate your time tonight, and we appreciate this great presentation, and thanks very much.
Thank you so much. And I would like to offer up to anyone who's here, if you would ever like to come for a tour of Minuteman to see what is happening and what your town has access to, I'm happy to give tours of our adult programming or our 9 through 12 programming. Just reach out anytime.
You know, I might take you up on that. I work right around the
Yeah.
corner from you at Lincoln Laboratory.
Please do. Watch out, because we'll try to connect some co-op kids with you if you do that. But please, if there's a group, we'd always be happy to host. Just reach out to me, and
Nice.
I'll see you
Yeah.
soon.
Nice. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank
for your
you.
time.
Okay, great. All right. Next on the agenda, I'm actually going to share the spreadsheet, the budget spreadsheet. I wanted to provide a little update. So Don and Hannah and I were in the meeting last week, the Tri-Town meeting, where the school district kind of presented their budget to the 3 member towns. And there was some discussion. So this was, let's see, this was the number that we were sort of paying attention to, is the increase in the operating assessment, not any of the debt. That's all expected, the operating assessment. And there was an assumption going in, maybe 4.8% or so. The school district provided a nice little presentation, and like they typically do, they started sort of with their ideal budget that they had come up with in January, and then showed us all the reductions that they had made in that budget. And the end result was about a 4.35% increase, which was about 818,000, if I remember correctly. I think since then, maybe they have made a few more reductions, and Marie will share some details with us in a minute. So we might be a little less than that. So I think we expressed some appreciation for all the work they did to get it down to 4.3% or so, but also emphasize the fact that the town of Bolton had expressed that 3% was about the limit that we could sustain. And so it was very interesting. There was a little bit of back and forth about what they could do to reduce things further. And the bottom line was this is the budget on the table. We're not going to make significant reductions because this is what the town of Bolton wants. This is the program they want us to execute. And the implication to me was that the school district feels like the town of Bolton is willing to accept a budget override every few years in order to support the program that they are putting together. Don or Hannah, did anybody want to weigh in, or you think I captured that fairly? Or
I think that's fair. They certainly don't feel encumbered by Prop 2.5 is certainly my impression along with that too.
I agree. I think you encapsulated it well.
So Bob, I mean, we could do a projection then. I mean, if we just assume a 4.3, 4.5, 4.7 increase over the next few years, we can, and all else equal with some growth assumption, we can probably predict with pretty good accuracy every year we're going to have to do an override, and by how much. And is that something we should just start setting the town's expectation on, and present those projections? Because I feel like going through the override last year, last year was unexpected to some degree, and we want to kind of get ahead of that next time.
yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you. I think maybe part of our presentation this year should be, at this level of operating assessment increase, we can estimate that we may require an override in X number of years. I don't think we'll need one every year, but certainly more frequently than 20 years, which was the last interval. And then maybe we will have this discussion about, is that really what the town wants, or is there another perspective out there?
Yeah, I definitely like to hear from the town people if that's truly what they're looking for.
I wonder if it's the same town people who are contributing their thoughts to the school committee budget versus coming to the town meeting and contributing their thoughts to the overall town budget. I feel like it's almost two different towns not talking to each other.
Yeah, could be.
That's my impression also, Greg.
I was a little disappointed last week that Lancaster did not come out a little stronger. They complained a little bit, but not a whole lot. And Stowe was basically like, "Yeah, it's fine with us."
Yeah, whatever. For what it's worth, Greg, the very few I've gone to a handful of the school committee meetings, and I was always the only participant. So I'm not sure where all their feedback's coming from, or if the population that I looked at is indicative of the whole. But it would always be a lonely time at these meetings when I was there.
Okay. All right. If there are more questions or discussion there, we can continue that. Or I think Marie had offered to kind of give us her latest and greatest on what maybe she has heard on some of the budget things.
All right. Some of the latest and greatest have not yet been publicly discussed, but just to loop back, the last budget that had gone to advisory was the expertly maintained February 17th. And if you recall at the summary page, it had a deficit of 404. Many things were still in flux. At that time, we'd incremented our new growth by about 268,000 to cover the portion of the supplemental billing for Alta. But we know that the supplemental billing is not all of the Alta billing by virtue of it just being for a portion of a fiscal year and for a portion of the project. One of the things in Our contracted assessor is very cagey with regards to what number we can carry beyond the additive 268, stating that the Alta assessments will be reflected in the recap in December. All of this is true, but I need to know now. So what I felt, though, in being conservative is increasing our new growth, because we have an estimate that is much larger than this, increasing our new growth by 25K on the revenue side. Still being conservative, not changing our state revenue projections from the governor's budget, matching our fiscal offset for the school resource officer, even though I believe we will be fully staffed and that position will be back in the school, which would be great for everyone. Not changing anything with the overlay surplus because that surplus is not available to us. We'd received notice of our health insurance premium, which is 2.9%, which is wonderful. The budget that was presented on the 17th of February was carrying about 10%. What I've done is sort of adjust that down then, reflected as 3%. Likewise, we carry some buffer for individuals who would lose their plans, and the Medicare plans are an unknown at this time. Within the budget that advisory had looked at, there had been some additive increases, so a line item for local improvements that had increased by $56,000, mainly to backfill Randy's needs on an annual basis for the patching ran over, the striping was more, and wanting some latitude. Another increase had been the wastewater treatment facility, as he's trying to approach the capital replacement, both from an operating budget side, not related to the operating contract, but sort of a two-pronged approach. Increase that by 10K and try to get the wastewater treatment facility on the capital plan in a staged way. For those two additive increases, I would recommend moving them to not to free cash, but to be funded in effect by free cash through capital stabilization. Taking those increases, not the line items themselves, but the fiscal 27 proposed increases out. Some of that is because I'm dancing between what the real Alta number is, which isn't there, and a need to present a balanced budget. The other line item, though, that I would like to move would be fire ponds. I'm a complete believer that the fire pond and dry cistern maintenance is mission critical. I'm also aware that on an annual basis, that account hasn't been historically touched in the recent years. But I don't want to take it away. I want it to be available. But by the same token, this, as we're in that Alta interim, is not quite the time to put in something just, not just because, but you know what I mean, as a belts and suspenders approach. With those adjustments, the deficit that we were showing was 136,000. Tomorrow night, the school committee will be receiving the revised Neshoba operating assessments. What they've adjusted some of their unemployment. I'm not sure what else they've adjusted because I was mainly just looking for our number. So our fiscal 27 for Neshoba is a 4.18% increase, dropping to 794. At that point, we have a deficit of 112. There's some things we could do. One of the things, which I know is not like the absolute ideal from an advisory perspective, would be reducing our OPEB at 265,063. There are other minor tweaks, within perhaps some components of DPW, but the increases for town building repairs, I am loath to touch, as we are living in the land of town building repairs. So I seek, though, advisory's feedback, both as to whether, just the slight increase in our new growth with a partial reflection of Alta, which isn't the real reflection, by 25K, moving some of those additive increases to standalone warrant articles, which would have a 3-year sunset, and if they're not used, then it flows back. And moving the fire ponds to a 20K warrant article makes sense, and likewise what you would do to obviate the 112K deficit.
Marie, can I ask a question just to make sure I understand this, what you're suggesting here? So your section where you talk about the additive increases moving to free cash, is what you're suggesting that at least for the first two, local improvements and sewer, we leave the budget as is in the spreadsheet. We just sort of allocate a portion against free cash so that, no, okay.
Not quite. And in fact, these are the things that had a notable increase in their ask for fiscal 27.
Yeah.
So it basically said, hey, the $56,000 increase in local improvements, we can't afford that this year, but we definitely hear you in wanting more local improvements monies. What about a warrant article of $75,000 spendable over 3 years? So that if your raise and appropriate local improvements doesn't get you there, you can also combine it with the other warrant article.
Okay. So we would reduce what we have in our spreadsheet now by 56K. We would leave something in the local improvements line. It just wouldn't be
It just wouldn't be the additive increase that had been
Right.
requested for fiscal 27.
I see. Can I ask you a question about how we treat the police cruiser? So we have had many, many debates about whether it should be a capital item or in the operating budget. And I think I've been beaten into submission over the years that we should just leave it in the operating budget. But I think it's sort of a spreadsheet exercise more than anything. Can we just sort of say, we're going to allocate 70K roughly, a close estimate, 70K from free cash to the operating budget to cover the cost of the cruiser. So yes, technically we're using free cash for our operating budget, but it's actually for a capital purchase.
One could. I think it might be I'm not sure, tricky for residents to understand. I think there's also always the fear something comes out of the operating budget in entirety and isn't going to, you know what I mean? And it's a thing, a capital thing, that there might come a year where that thing will not be possible, or will be unobtainable.
Right. I think that the concern with pulling the cruiser out as a warrant article is, well, it might get not disapproved. Right. So I see that logic. I'm just wondering if we could offset the cost with free cash, and we would have to describe it at town meeting and say, well, we're allocating 70K from free cash to the operating budget to cover this large purchase.
Right.
Can I ask a different question on the local improvement line item that you had for the 56 in the budget and the 75 in the warrant article? What exactly does that cover again? Can you remind me?
So the local improvements rate now are covering a part of the temporary disinfection, but for in the normal course of events, it would be, roadside, not full-scale contracted paving, but striping, cleaning, patching, catch basin cleaning, etc.
Okay. Well, I guess the good news is we're pretty close on with the budget closing, and I'm confident that we can get it to close over the next few weeks. Okay. Is there anything else on the horizon that's going to be like a windfall that's going to help us out?
You're so positive, Bob.
Well, it could go either way, right? I mean,
I think at the end of the day, we're gonna have over 800,000 in free cash at the end of this year if all goes exactly as budgeted, right?
Right.
842.
If everything at town meeting passes. The one positive thing, we're getting the strong feeling from DEP that they would want a new well. We had those two options, not really options, but for the permanent disinfection, one is about 450, our preferred solution. The other being about 950, our not preferred solution. It appears DEP is leaning more towards the 950, although we haven't gotten a definitive answer. There have been conversations with Randy, our engineers, as well as representatives. Positive note was Congresswoman Farhan's office reached out and encouraged us to submit for a federal earmark for the water project. So they have their earmarkability, at least this was as of Friday, but I did speak with them on Monday, but as of Friday was looking great within their district. So that application has been submitted. The downside is we won't find out, until the fall. But likewise, if someone said, well, what is your solution for permanent disinfection for DEP? At this moment in time, I can't say what they're going to require us to do, but I know I'll have an answer by May.
Is that something that has to go in front of the town, this town meeting, or does it get pushed
A
off?
portion, what needs to go in front would be the preliminary design and engineering. I have a preliminary warrant review, which things are all upside down at 6s and 7s. And Jenny and I are talking, and obviously it's at the select board's discretion of the staging of the warrant. This is just how I think of it flowing, of annual reports, unpaid bills, replenishment of the reserve fund, and that I would be seeking advisory's input as to what number, replenishment of local improvements, looping back with Randy, the operating budget, which I learned is traditionally article number 4, but I'm not sure. I want to keep a sharp demarcation between fiscal 25, fiscal 26, and then we move into fiscal 27. An additional revolving fund from Park and Rec, some language changes in their existing revolving funds, as well as then all revolving fund spending limits. 2 transfers, one of them to stabilization to meet 5% of our operating budget out of our free cash, a transfer to capital stabilization of a portion. Planning board articles, which are very important, but I am not the expert to speak to them. The permanent water disinfection approach for engineering, 125 as an engineering for preliminary. If we can obviously cover this through our free cash, if DEP wants the more expensive solution, and if we don't get a federal earmark, then at the next year's annual town meeting, we would likely roll this into a bond. It's a bunch of ifs, but for now, this is what we know now. One-time capital, my recommendations, and likewise happy to discuss. I was for the regional school district for their doors, in their list of prioritization, that was their first priority. And the effect of, if you can only have one thing, be completed over the coming year, what is that thing? Like more of a focus on site safety and security. The DPW garage painting had taken precedence over Houghton painting, given some feedback that I'd received from, I believe, the last advisory meeting. Capital stabilization to address those local improvements, fire pond improvements, wastewater treatment facility, and then a proposal from Rebecca for a grant that she is expecting to receive for almost for 85% of that cost. So, done.
Yeah, that was my question. If 80, is she gonna get is she's looking for a grant to reimburse 85% of the 75K?
Yes. So actually getting two grants, one is I want to say the Mass Trails, and the other is the Nashua River Wild Scenic, but she won't be finding out until June. This is a
Right.
project that she had applied last year for capital, mainly twofold, one of them being Bowers, very important to us, and also it's sort of indefinite need. So it's sort of the ideal use of capital. We don't know. If she doesn't need it, she won't use it. Right, she gets the grant. And then replacement of 2 DPW trucks.
Yeah. No, I hate to see us, doing discretionary transfers to some of these stabilization funds and what potentially could be overstated at Bowers Springs in order to close out the budget.
This was a discrete capital request. It had nothing to do with the budget, though. I see what you're saying, but for Rebecca's and the Conservation Commission, they had proposed the Bowers Brook earthen dam repair.
Yeah.
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 Okay, great. Well, thanks, Marie. I think that's all looking good. Ninashka, do you think you'll have a chance to like incorporate all of this, that Marie's suggestions plus the new assessment from Minuteman plus the latest Neshoba assessment, and in a week or two have like a revised latest and greatest spreadsheet?
Sure. Yep. No problem.
Okay, that would be great.
Thank you, Ninashka.
All right. Does anyone have anything else? So for next week, there's tentatively a meeting on the calendar, but I'm not sure that we have much to do. I don't think we have any operating budget items that we need to re-vote on.
Right.
Other than we have to vote on the school assessment, but we won't have that final number yet. We've already approved our annual report, so we don't have to do that. I don't think warrant articles will be ready to be reviewed yet. Okay, so I guess stay tuned, but unless something comes up that we need to do, maybe a transfer request shows up or something, I don't know. We may or may not need to meet next week, but I'll send out an email and let everyone know.
I had a preliminary thing on my schedule for Thursday, the 12th, for advisory and select board. Is that off the table at this point?
That's on the table. That's a select board, though. That's a select board meeting upcoming.
Okay.
Oh, that's next week too, right? Oh, I missed that one. Okay. Marie, do you think the warrant articles will be ready by
They'll
then?
be in some stronger form, yes.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, maybe
They're
that's the
counter
better
rated.
move, is to assume we won't meet Tuesday, but we may meet Thursday to review the warrant.
Still
Well,
at 6:30 on Thursday.
Um,
7.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
The select board usually meets at 7.
Okay.
So between me and Jenny and Marie, we'll get it sorted out, and I'll send out an email in the next few days.
Yeah, I may not be able to attend.
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
Okay, excellent. All in favor, please say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Okay, thanks everyone.